Welcome to an example in which we're solving a triangle given all three sides and none of the angles. So let's begin by drawing a picture of what we've got here. That might be too big. Let me make it a little smaller so we can fit everything in. Actually, you know what? I keep changing my mind. Let me make it wide but not so tall. There we go. All right. So I'm going to call this A, B. This angle up here is gamma. That's what gamma looks like. A is across from little a, B is across from little b, and gamma is across from C. So this is gamma here. Alpha and beta, it's just A. I'm just going to use A and B, English letters. Gamma is just a Greek letter. Okay, they're telling me little a is 38. Little b is 60, and little c is 78. See how it's B is across from B, and A is across from A, and C is across from gamma. They always line them up like that, and that's what they're saying down here. They're across from the same letter. A is always across from A, B is across from B, and C with gamma. Okay, so we're supposed to solve this triangle, which means find all the sides and angles. We already have the three sides, so what we need is the three angles. How do we find the three angles? Well, I've given you specific instructions on the notes. Here they are. Let me come on down here and find them. Here they are. This is the 10.128 notes. Three sides of a triangle and no angles called side, side, side. We have three sides called side, side, side. What do? Use the law of cosines with the largest side to find the angle across from it. So we've got to start with the large side. Why? Why do we do that? Well, it's because when you're doing, it's because the next step we're going to use the law of sines. And whenever you use law of sines, you don't want to use the largest side. Why? Because inverse sine has two answers. Well, I should say can have two answers. So what do I mean? Between 0 and 90 and 90, 180. Remember how the all students take X? All students. Sine is positive in both those quadrants. So therefore, inverse sine of a positive angle can end up being in the first quadrant between 0 and 90, or the second between 90 and 180. And the calculator will only give you first quadrant answers. You've got to get the second quadrant by taking 180 minus the first answer. Remember we had some of that? Earlier, we'd have two possible triangles and all that. Anyway, we don't want all that. That's a big pain in the behind. We don't want to do all that and mess with all that, right? So the way you avoid all that trouble is you just make sure when you do law of sines, it's got to be in the first quadrant. You don't have to mess with the second. Well, how do you make sure that? You have not the biggest side. As long as you're the only angle that could possibly end up in the second quadrant is the angle across from the biggest side. So therefore, if you make sure when you're using law of sines and doing sine inverse that you don't have the biggest side, then you know automatically your answer is in the first quadrant. So, long story short, when we do law of cosines, we do the largest side so that when we get to step 2 and law of sines, we're already done with the largest side, and we're for sure not using the largest side with law of sines. Now, whether you understood all that or not, you can rewind it and listen again. But know these steps. You've got to start with the largest side for the side, 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 law of cosines. Okay, let's do it. Largest side. So, this one is the largest, right? 78. So I'm going to use the largest. So step 1, the largest side, and I'm going to do law of cosines. So that's C squared. Remember, there's three versions to the law of cosines, right? The law of cosines has the version that starts with A or B or C. I'm going to do the one starting with, what was it, C? And C has C across from it with A and B in the middle. So I'm going to use the largest side. It was, yeah, C. Okay, so C squared is A squared plus B squared minus 2 times A times B times cosine of, well, capital C, but it's actually gamma. That is the angle across from from side C. It's always the side and the angle across from it in the law of cosines with the other two letters in between, A and B in between. All right, so that's the one we're going to use, the largest side. So here we go. So we have C squared, don't we? It's 78. So 78 squared is A squared. 38 squared plus B squared, 60, not 60 degrees. 60 squared minus 2 times little a, 38 times little b, 60 times the cosine of gamma. Going to use that to find the cosine of gamma. So let's go to the calculator. So I'm getting 6084 squared 78 is 38 squared, which is 1444 plus 3600 minus 2 times 38 times 60 is what, 40? 560 times the cosine of gamma. All right, trying to solve here. I'm gonna add those together, I guess. 60, 84. I'm gonna add these two. I can't do the other one. this is a separate term, right? That has to stay together. 1444 plus 3600 is 5044. Pin's going a little bit. There we go, minus 4560 times cosine of gamma. Okay, and let's subtract 5044. Like that, cancels out. What am I getting? Subtracting those, I'm getting 1040 equals minus 4560 cosine of gamma. Keep going. Divide by the minus 4560. Like so. Cancels. Cosine gamma. I'm just going to leave this. Yeah, rather than get some ugly decimal. Let me just move this over here. Cosine of gamma. This is just going to be 1040 over minus 4560, okay? And I'm trying to solve for gamma. What do? Do we divide by cosine to get gamma alone? No. I hope you've seen enough now. You don't get rid of a trig function by dividing because it's not times, right? If it was times, I would divide, but it's not times. So I don't divide. What gets rid of it? Cosine inverse, right? Whatever you do to one side, you have no choice but to do the same thing to the other. That cancels cosine. It's inverse. That's how you get rid of trig functions. Okay. Where does that leave us? That leaves us with, no more cosine. What am I doing? We canceled out the cosine. Gamma equals, what? Let me see that. And then cosine inverse of it, I'm getting 103.18348 degrees. All right, we got gamma, 18348 degrees. Yeah, so there's gamma. Whew, a lot of work for gamma. So gamma is 103.18348 degrees. That's the largest angle in the triangle. See how it's more than 90? There can only be one angle more than 90 because the three of them have to make 180. So if one of them is more than 90, the other two have less than 90 left. So now we have to find the other two. What do? Let's go back to the instructions on the notes. And so we use the law of cosines to find the largest side with the largest angle across from it. Got it. Now, use either of the other two sides and its angle across which law of sines to find the second angle. So now we switch to law of sines. Why do we do that? Because law of sines is easier, and now we can, meaning we have an angle and opposite side. As soon as you have an angle and the side opposite, you can shift to law of sines, which is easier. It's just those equal fractions. And so I'm going to do this pair with either that pair or that pair. It really doesn't matter. So let's do it. So come on down. So this is all step 2 now. Law of sines. And so I'm just going to do A over sine A. And I've got to use, where is it? It's right there. So I'm going to use A with A. And I've got to use C with gamma. This pair is a must, because that's the only pair that I have both the angle and the opposite side. So they've got to be used, and then one other pair where I'm missing something. So I'm going to got to use C with C. So I'll do it. So that's going to be equal to C over sine gamma. So that'll be, so little a, so let me bring it over here. So little a, I don't know, right? No, I do know little a. What is it? Little a is 38. Okay, little a is 38. So little a is 30, right? I could just come down here, I guess. Little a is 38 over sine capital A, which I don't know yet, is little c. What was little c? I forgot. Little c is 78. Is little c 78 over sine gamma. Sine and gamma is right here. 103.18348. By the way, look at all those digits I'm using. You want to use a lot of digits of accuracy when you're still in the middle of the problem. I haven't finished yet. Now up here on the answer for gamma, I'm going to put in 103 point, how many do they want? 2 decimals. This is 103.18 degrees. They've already got the degree symbol. But when I use gamma in my calculation, I'm going to use a whole bunch of digits. Remember, never round until the end. So use a whole bunch of digits. Okay, so now we got to solve diagonal, diagonal, multiply 38 sine of 103.18348 degrees is 78 sine capital A. Divide by 78, like so, and we get sine of capital A is 38 sine of 103.18348 degrees over 78. What do I do now to get capital A? To get rid of that sign, you know, we just did it, right? We do it again, this time sine inverse. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. You can't divide by trig things, you do sine inverse. All right, hit the buttons on your calculator for that whole entire thing. Sine inverse of 38 times sine of our last answer. So sine inverse of that. Okay, I'm getting 28.31637 degrees for capital A. 28.31637. 28, so it's right here. 28.31637 degrees. That's alpha, so they want me to round that to two places when I put in the answer. 32, but I'm going to use the longer version now. Finally, to find the third side, beta, you know, just subtract from 180, right? So I'll just do it right here. Capital beta, B, is going to be 180, because triangle holds 180. 180 minus the other two angles, minus 103.18348 plus, that's not right, plus 28.31637. Subtracted from 180. I'm getting capital B is 48.5002 degrees. They want me to round it 48.50. What's a 5 there? 50 degrees. 48.50 degrees. There we go. We found all three angles. How did we do it? We started with the largest side and law of cosines. Largest side was the C. Largest. So we started with that, did law of cosines, found that angle with cosine inverse at the very end. Got that angle. Then we shifted to law of sines and cross multiplied, did sine inverse at the end, found a second angle. Then the third angle we just added the two we had subtracted from 180. It's all in the notes right here that we just followed for side, 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 three sides. Start with law of cosines for the largest side, then shift to law of sines, then subtract from 180 to get the third angle. So there we go. There are all the answers and all the work for that challenging